The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. Jesus said to his disciples, "Be watchful, be alert. You do not know when the time will come. It is like a man traveling abroad. He leaves home and places his servants in charge, each with his own work, and orders the gatekeeper to be on the watch. Watch, therefore. You do not know when the Lord of the house is coming, whether in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or in the morning. May he not come suddenly and find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to all, watch." The Gospel of the Lord. He places his servants in charge, each with his own work, and orders the gatekeeper to be on the watch. Watch, therefore, for you do not know when the Lord of the house is coming. May he not come suddenly and find you sleeping. Watchmen play a very important and significant role in the Scriptures. The Jews, the Greeks, and the Romans broke the hours of the night into 4 separate watches. They separated the night by watches and not by hours. And so there were 4 watches in the night. The first watch was from dusk, sundown, until 9 p.m. The second watch was from 9 p.m. until midnight. The third watch was from midnight until cockcrow. And the fourth and final watch of the night was from cockcrow till the morning. Now, I grew up in Lewiston, Maine, which was a mill town. And all along the Androscoggin River, there was a series of cotton mills, except there was one woolen mill. And I, before I became a priest, worked in the textile industry. And so in the early 70s, Libby Mill, which was a woolen mill, burned down. And anybody who's worked in or around textiles understands that within the industry there are a tremendous amount of combustibles. There are so many things that can cause a fire, like a machine that's not being properly oiled. Just the slightest little spark and everything goes up. And you've got to be really, really careful. And so Libby Mill burned down. And it put a tremendous amount of people out of work. So if you walked down Ash Street, and as you crossed Canal Street and wanted to go into the mill complex of Bates Fabrics, where I worked, and many of you probably have some of the world-famous Bates bedspreads. They were sold all over the world. And as you walked and you crossed Canal Street, there was a little bridge that you had to cross, and right between the bridge and the mill complex, there was a guard shack with a gate. And the gatekeeper was the watchman. And in order for you to get into the mill complex, you had to be able to demonstrate that you had business there. Otherwise, you didn't get in. And so the night watchman had a really, really, really important job and a really important role within that kind of industry. And so at night, there were 2 watchmen in the guard shack. And every hour, on the hour, one of the watchmen would leave the guard shack and he would make his rounds through the mill. And he carried a clock. And at designated stations, he had to take the clock and he had to punch the clock to demonstrate that he had been at that place at a particular time when he was supposed to be there. And he would go on his way to the next station, punch the clock until he made his rounds and he came back to the guard shack. And then on the hour, the next guard would make his rounds. Because not all of the departments were working at night, and so his job was to make sure that everything was secure, lest something like happened at Libby Mill would happen at Base Fabrics, and thousands of people would be put out of a job. So when I worked for Base Fabrics, I worked as a night superintendent for a while. I worked the 3rd shift. How many of you ever worked 3rd shift? So you know by working the 3rd shift that the most difficult hours to stay awake are between cock crow and the morning. Between 4 and 5 a.m. are the most difficult hours to stay awake. You got to be really disciplined. You got to keep busy because your eyes begin to get a little drowsy. You know what I'm saying? So one night, and part of my job as the night super was to kind of go through the mill and make sure that everything was secure and to kind of check up on the watchman, so to speak. And one night I got a phone call from the watchman from the guard shack. And he said, I can't leave to make my rounds. And I said, why not? And he said, because the other watchman hasn't come back. And I said, oh. So I went through the mill. I went from place to place to place to place. And I got to this particular place, and guess what I found? The watchman was asleep. He was asleep. And so I had to report what I found, and the following day, he was dismissed. Now, you might say that's a little harsh. Why would somebody lose their job just for falling asleep? Well, if you know anything about being a watchman, if you know anything about being on guard duty, to desert your post or to fall asleep while you were on guard duty, the penalty was you were shot. Because a lot of people's lives depended on the fact that you were alert, you were awake, that you were paying attention, lest something terrible would come upon all of those people who were depending on you. And that's exactly what Jesus is saying to us in the gospel today, that we have to be like watchmen. We have to be alert. We have to be awake. We have to make sure that we are making the rounds, that we are like gatekeepers, that anyone or anything that we allow into our hearts is going to affect our souls. Thoughts have consequences. What I read has consequences. What I watch on television has consequences. I'm allowing it in. I'm allowing it in. And so Advent is the time of year when we kind of step back, so to speak, and we are making sure that we are alert, that we are watching. You notice there were 4 watches in the night. There are 4 candles on the wreath. The first candle, as we celebrate the first Sunday of Advent, we are at the first watch. Next week, we will be at the second watch. The third week will be at cockcrow. And then the fourth and final week will be between cockcrow in the morning, and we will be ready to celebrate his first coming. Advent is that time to prepare for his first coming, but to make sure that we are prepared for the final coming. And St. Paul tells us in the second reading today that we have been given every spiritual gift. We lack no spiritual gifts. We don't lack anything. And one of the best ways that I know how to make sure that we are watchful, we are prepared, and that we are alert is by going to confession on a frequent basis. To make sure that my heart is ready. To make sure that my sin is not an impediment to the Lord making his home. You see, because we don't know when he's going to come, he tells us that we must be alert and we must be watchful, because the Lord might come at the first watch. And then again, he might come between 9 p.m. and midnight. Then again, he might come at cockcrow. And then again, he might come in the fourth and final watch, or then again, he may come for me or for you this very night. The question is, am I ready? Am I prepared? Have I been watching? Have I been so alert? Have I been alert enough that I am aware of what I should be guarding myself against? What do I allow myself to listen to? Do I participate in gossip? And listening is participating. Do I have custody of the eyes? Do some of the things that I allow myself to gaze upon, are they affecting my soul? You see. And so am I alert? Am I awake? Am I watchful? And so the Lord has come, and he will come again. But when he comes, will we be ready? Will we be watching?